Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Elise Adler, Director of Events for Parnassus Books. We're delighted to share today's event featuring New York Times bestselling, award-winning author Sharon Cameron. Just as a reminder, you can purchase signed copies of her book, Reese Witherspoon's December young adult pick, The Light in Hidden Places. You can purchase that from Parnassus Books. And we'll go ahead and put that link online for you to purchase. Today we'll be taking audience questions, which you can also put in the comments and or not. So we'll be recording this for you, but we'll try to get any kind of questions that you may have answered. We're really excited because today Sharon's in conversation with Deborah Wiles, and I'm so pleased to turn it over to Sharon and Deborah.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Sharon.
Hello, am I on? Am I on here?
Exactly. You're on now.
Oh, okay, that's good. I was just trying to figure that out. I can only see you, but you can see me, right?
So I see you.
Correct. Okay.
It's you and me, kid.
That sounds great.
Yeah, thank you for having me because this is one of my favorite reads from last year, The Light in Hidden Places. I think I've read it twice, actually. I started reading it on my way home in last January. It was in Galley. And that's what I have here today because I have all my little pages marked for you of things I want to ask about and know about. We had a great time a year ago, you and I and our other sister, Przemyâsl Ryan,
Yes.
with Mariana Land and me with Kent State as we were traveling. Before this pandemic hit, we were traveling to talk about our new books.
Yes, in case anyone can't tell, Debbie and Pam and I became fast friends and book sisters and all the things on one epic train ride between Philadelphia and Baltimore that really should have been recorded for posterity.
In fact, I'm a chatty person, but it was so amazing sitting opposite the two of them and just ping-ponging back and forth at the family stories that I just pretty much took it in. It was fantastic.
We had a great time and became fast friends. So yeah. I'm so happy, Debbie, that you are here doing this with me today. Oh, very special. Thank you.
I wouldn't have it any otherwise. Thank you for asking me. So let's get into this book because this book there's a lot to talk about. It's a Reese Witherspoon pick. That's such a great thing. It's going to find its way into lots of homes and lots of hands this way. It would have anyway, but now it has an extra boost to do its work in the world. And maybe we'll talk about that at some point too. But to just begin, will you tell us about The Light in Hidden Places? Tell us what it's about and tell us how you came to it because I love that story. So take your time, spin it out. We have all the time we want.
As if I needed encouragement to talk longer. You know what a dangerous thing you just encouraged me to do, Debbie. Well, what you said just then about this book finding its way, into more homes, that means an incredible amount to me. And not because this is a book I wrote, because it is a story that someone real lived, and it is become so much a part of me. But I think it's such an important story. It excites me so much to think about more people knowing who Stefania Podgâorska is. And I came to the story of Stefania Podgâorska the way I've come to most wonderful things in my life, completely by accident. I walked through my living room one day and turned on my TV screen. And I should preface by saying this was a long time before writing was even a the proverbial twinkle in my eye. It was not, I had never even thought of writing. I was doing the first part of my life, which was classical music. I was a classical pianist, and I thought that's what I would do forever, and I was very happy doing that. But I will say, an enormous reader, you know, all my life. Story is something that has always been incredibly important to me, and I think it's where I have found a lot of my own truth through story, which is always an interesting irony to say that we find our truth through fiction, but I think we do. That's kind of how we're built, is to find that through story. So I just long before I had even thought of writing, I walked through my living room one day. It was the early 90s, so I did this to turn the television on, and I remember that. And there was a woman on my TV screen, and she said 5 words that absolutely changed my life. She said, "My name is Stefania Podgâorska." And she had such a presence about her. And she was sitting, it was just her in the camera shot. There was someone off screen asking questions, and she was just telling about her life. And so I sat down and I listened to her tell me about being a young girl. She was 15, 16 years old, on her own in a German occupied city in Poland, during World War II. And her parents were, she had one parent who had died, one parent who had been taken to a slave labor camp. She was without money, without a job, and she was the sole caretaker of a 6-year-old sister, Helena. And this was a dreadful time to be living in. She was not in a big city. She was in a little small city in sort of the backwater, almost to Ukraine. But it was dark, and it was difficult. And in the middle of that dark and that difficulty and the despair that comes with having nothing to care for yourself or for a child, and not even knowing how to do that, in the middle of the night came a knock on the door. And on the other side of the door was a young Jewish man named Max Diamant, who she had known before the war. She had worked for his family and really almost become a part of their family, even though she was Catholic and they were Jewish. It was an unusual situation for that city in Poland. And Max Diamant was broken and bloody because he had just jumped from a moving train that was taking him to a death camp. And he knew he was going to a death camp. His parents had already gone. He was there with one of his brothers. They knew exactly what was going to happen. This was not a work camp they were going to. And so he decided to commit suicide, and he jumped from the train. Only he didn't die. He just messed himself up pretty badly and made his way back to the only person he knew that might be able to help him, which was Stefania Podgâorska. And so Stefania and Helena had a choice to make at that point. And it was a difficult choice, because not a month before, they had seen an entire family just up the block shot, parents, children, all of them, for hiding 2 Jews in their apartment. She knew what this choice meant. And Stefania and Helena, who was 6 at the time, said, "Yes, we will hide you." And eventually they hid Max's only surviving brother and his brother's fiance, until there were 13 Jews secreted behind a false wall in her attic, and only the 2 girls to take care of 13 hidden people. And that is when there was another knock on the door. And this time it was the Gestapo on the other side. And they said, "We are requisitioning your house for staff quarters for a new German hospital that's moving in across the street." And the Germans moved in. So now
Don't believe
Stefania,
it.
now Stefania had 13 Jews hidden in an attic directly above a bedroom where 4 Nazis were sleeping.
Mhm.
And this is what she had to navigate. And I sat on my couch listening to her tell her story, not doing anything I was supposed to be doing. And I was riveted. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because what happened next was one of the most amazing stories of sacrifice, bravery, love, and humanity that I had ever come across. And that day in my living room, Stefania Podgâorska became my hero. She was my hero. I wanted to believe that I could be a little bit like that if I ever found myself in that kind of circumstance. So fast forward 23 years, actually.
I know right there. Although as a fellow writer, I know it takes time for stuff to speak.
Well, it takes time to actually decide you're going to be a writer.
Yeah.
So fast forward, suddenly it's 2017. I have 5 published novels now. I have these wonderful tools called Google, in front of me, and I thought I'm gonna look for Stefania Podgâorska. I'm gonna try and find her and see what happened to her, and because I thought this would just be such an amazing story to put in a novel. But even then I had no idea the depth of the story that I was going to encounter. I did a little shameless stalking, and I found that the end of Stefania's story was she married one of the men she saved, Max Diamant, and they had a son. And the son was in Los Angeles, and I reached out. It took a little bit of bravery on my part because I felt like I shouldn't be emailing strangers, but I did. And he was very kind, very open. I went and visited with him, and we talked about the possibility of, doing a book about his mom. And he took me to meet his mom. I got to meet Stefania, and she was in a care home in Los Angeles at this point. She was in the last year of her life. She had dementia. She had no idea that she had met me, but I will never, ever forget meeting her. How many of us have the privilege of being able to sit at the feet of our hero? It was an amazing experience, and she was such a presence. Even then, she was just, cheeks were smooth, back was straight up. She was just an amazing person, even then. And so I was very privileged to get to help write her obituary when she did pass away. I got to speak at her funeral, and 3 weeks after she had passed away, Ed and I and my husband, we all got on a plane and we went to Poland to research and kind of rediscover her life.
Some of the pictures of your trip to Poland, they're breathtaking. You went everywhere. You really dug deep. That was one of the things that I wanted you to talk about too, was the fact that these stories, they don't come just from the television interview, which was powerful enough, but then they come from meeting someone that can help you with that story, whether it's your hero and the stories about her, or it's someone else, or finding little treasures along the way. That happens too, especially when you're curious the way you are and you open yourself up to possibility, but also going there. We talk all the time about going there when you're trying to write a story, especially historical fiction, if you can. So can you talk a little bit about going there and what that was like?
Yes, absolutely. And I have to say, 3 weeks after Stefania had passed away, it was a very raw trip.
Yeah,
especially for Ed. It was such, but it was also, I think, a very healing trip as well. It was a very life-changing experience. We went to the city of Przemyâsl, and we walked, all the streets that they walked, and we found the site of the tool factory where Stefania eventually worked for the Germans. We found the apartment where the Diamants had lived and the site of their grocery store where Stefania worked. We went to Tatarska Street, which is where Stefania had secreted the 13 Jews in the attic, and we got to stand in the attic. We got to go in the cellar and see where Max had dug their first hiding place down underneath. You could see the cross section in the dirt where he had dug down and where they had initially hidden. So it just brought such a reality to the story for me. We were able to interview one of the children who was secreted in the attic, her Dusha, in the story, and she was able to tell me so much about Stefania and Max and what it felt like to have to spend an enormous chunk of your childhood, as she did, secreted in an attic. It was sweltering in the summer. It was freezing in the winter. They were starving. It was so difficult to get food up there. And that was a lot of that was Helena, the little sister, who was doing that, was sneaking food and a waste bucket out, food in and a waste bucket out. She said they were so tightly packed inside the space, you could not stand up. They were so tightly packed that everyone had to lay on their side in the same direction. And if one person turned over, all of them had to turn over. Rats would run across their bodies. And when all of this is happening, you can't make a sound.
Right.
There can't be a sneeze, a snore, a movement. It's absolute silence. And I would have never been able to feel what that attic was really like without interviewing Jusha, who, by the way, is one of just the nicest, most lovely people I have ever met. She was so kind to me. And we were also able to interview Helena Podgâorska, who stayed in Poland and became a doctor. And again, I said what a thing it was to sit at the feet of one of your heroes, and that happened to me twice.
Yeah.
Because I got to sit with Helena Podgâorska, who was just as much of a hero as her sister. She got asked to do things as a child that no child should have ever had to do. I think one of my favorite stories about Helena is they used Helena to pass notes in and out of the ghetto. So when the family had been rounded up and was in the ghetto, and that was fenced off and guarded, Stefania even then was sneaking in food to them, trying to keep them from starving, trying to keep that family alive. And they thought no one will suspect a child. So Helena was the one passing the notes back and forth under the fence. Only the Gestapo guard caught her. He saw her, what she was doing, that she had taken a note. And so he grabbed her and started beating her. And she got him by the leg and bit him as hard as she could in the leg. And he let go of her and she ran. And while she was being chased by the Nazi she had bitten, she ate the note.
Yeah.
That's the kind of child that we're talking about here. I can't imagine an adult having the wherewithal to do, what she did. How often do you get to sit at the feet of a woman who bit a Nazi? Never. And she, again, my hero. She's an amazing, lovely person. But I think what probably affected me most, about this trip, and I know you've heard me say this before, Debbie, and I know you understand it because because you're a historian like me. You like to dig into the past and understand the past, and that is definitely something that's a trait about me that precedes my writing by a long time. I spend an enormous amount of time thinking about the big picture of the world and how we got to where we are right now. And so I went to Poland, and I went on this trip being probably, certainly more informed than most people about what went on during the Holocaust. I know exactly what happened in the camps. I have listened to hours and hours of oral interviews of survivors and people who lived during that time. I read all of Hitler's speeches. I know a lot about what that was about. I knew lots of facts about the Holocaust. But when we went to Auschwitz and took the tour that people take, when you're touring Auschwitz, one of the things they do is they take a small group. They take you through the dressing room where everyone would undress and into the room that was supposed to be a shower room but was a gas chamber. And they let you stand there in silence for 4-5 minutes maybe. And it's dark and dank, and the walls are stained, and frankly, it stinks. I don't think it will ever not smell like death in that room. It is by far the most horrible, horrible place I have ever been in. And I stood in that room and realized I knew nothing about the Holocaust. Nothing. I might have known facts, but facts aren't enough. I felt it just by having the tiny little bit of an experience that someone else did. I felt it. And it really changed me. And it changed the kind of book I wanted to write, because I had gone wanting to write, this book about this one amazing young woman's experience during the Holocaust and the incredible things that she did. But I left wanting something completely different. I didn't want to write about one young woman's experience, that people could know about. I wanted to write a story that the reader could feel. I wanted them to feel her experience the way I had felt one little bit of that experience, because you can know facts all day. I mean, but they're going to fade, they're going to go away. But when you feel that, that's what stays with you. That's what you don't forget. And we can't ever forget this. But I also don't think we should forget what it's possible to do in the face of that kind of adversity. And that really became my goal in writing The Light in Hidden Places.
That comes across so strongly in the book, and almost page by page by page. It's such a page turner. There's so much tension in it. There's so much what if in it. I actually, the second time I went through it, I started reading it as reading like a writer, but sometimes you read for story, but it's more often than not for me these days. I'm also at the same time, although I couldn't do this with your book because I just had to turn the page, but I went back and I started reading it like a writer. It's tense, it's taut, it's full of emotion. And I marked a passage that actually illustrates exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if we have time to even read out loud, but your craft is very wonderful in this book of helping us to see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, feel it. And you do it with a modicum of description. And this is getting into the writer's craft and steering away from the story a little bit. But if that's okay, I mean, we can talk a little bit about how this book came to be and how you put it together. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if the 5 books you'd written before that, which are in a totally different genre, I think all of them, actually sort of prepared you to write historical fiction in this way, or if maybe it was just the experience of being in that room, which, I think of places like that shower room that's a gas chamber. I almost think of them as consecrated ground now. I almost Like when I was writing Kent State and I went to Kent, Ohio, and I stood on Blanket Hill and I walked all the places that the National Guard soldiers were, and stood in all of the places where each student fell. And, you know, there's a feeling that comes to you. There's something about it that stays in that space. And so you take that with you, don't you think? I mean, I think you take that with you. You take it into yourself, I think, when you get ready to write your book. So I'm reading through your book and I'm thinking, you know, I'm a Southern storyteller, so I am all about the setting. You know, I can just give you, I can build you a world, you know, but then I need to populate it, and I also need to have something happen. But for you to talk about things like doing the dishes or gathering plums, and you can do all this stuff in just like 1 or 2 little lines, and then you're right back into the story. I really appreciate that about how you wrote. What is that economy of words that you do? I don't know if you want to speak to this or not, but
I can speak to this.
the economy of words that also has so much feeling. I think for those of us who love words and stories and write too, that's a useful question, maybe. What do you think?
I think it's a really interesting question, because it speaks to voice, and you know, every author has a voice that you can't help. You know, that there's a piece of you that comes out. It's a magical, inexplicable process, kind of like that, the aura of the consecrated ground, like what you were talking about. It's hard to explain what that is, but it's real, you know, and there's some kind of, you know, magical process where I think when you are passionate about a subject matter or words or whatever it is that is, you know, sparking that passion, that comes out onto the page. And it's unique to every person, right? Every reader. You can't imitate someone else. It's always going to be yours. But I think with my books, and I have written very different books. Yeah, I've written some sci-fi and some steampunk-esque kind of stuff, and a little dystopian. You know, I've kind of gone all over the place, and I've used a different kind of voice, I think. For all of them, because, you know, even my books that are not in first person, you know, I think there's a style to the sentence structure and the rhythm of the sentence structure that goes with a setting. And this is only a Sharon Cameron thing. I don't think anybody else, don't take this to heart, because I think this is just a Sharon Cameron thing, but this is the way I think about it.
I think that Say It Again is a style that goes with the particular kind of book that you're writing.
Right, with the feel, and it's more than the setting, I think, and that might not have been the right word. It's the atmosphere, it's the tone, you know, of the whole book. It's the voice, you know, and there's a stylistic choice, I think, that happens there. And this might be my musical background coming in a little bit, because I think I listen to words very much in terms of rhythm and phrase and the feel and the flow of not only the story overall, but sentence by sentence. You know, I tend to think of that. And so, you know, my first books were very 1850s. So the sentences were long, they were flowery, you know, they kind of fit that style. Whereas this is the mid 1940s. You know, it's war.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You were
modern.
You don't have time to be flowery and
yes, it feels like it needs a more clipped, sparse, you know, kind of rhythm, you know, to the book, as opposed to the you know, a longer flowery, or, you know, it's just I've kind of adjusted that, I think, with every book I've written, just sort of based on that feel.
Well, it serves the book so well because there is a clipped nature to it. It's very plot heavy. I bet you had so much plot to fit into however many words this is. You know,
if I had written all the things it would have been a 2,000-page book. You know, it was
sometimes that's like the book I'm working on now is like this. Sometimes that is the dilemma. You have so much material. You have mountains of material. So how do you decide to structure it? What's your framework? How do you decide to put that together into a story that's going to be beloved, that's going to be read, that's going to be clasped to somebody's breast and says, yeah, you have to read this, you know. I think that's a big part of it, but plot heavy, but also very dialogue heavy. It's just really, really well done, and you know, speaks to the skill that you have in storytelling. It's really
that is very kind coming from you.
It's very
one of my writer heroes. So that makes me feel wonderful. Yeah.
So here, I know that we're going to run into a little bit of time that we have left, so we can circle back through, or if there's something I haven't asked you that you want me to ask. I just want to make sure that we touch on what's coming next as well. Do we have time for that? Do you have talk about that, or do you want to? Or
no, we can absolutely talk about that. I was actually thinking about that with your last question, because the tone of my newest book, but the tone of my newest book, Bluebird, absolutely 100% comes from a night I spent at the Village Vanguard with my editor listening to jazz. So and she and I must have actually really done a good job of that, because she emailed me after I sent her the sample pages, and she said, this feels like that night we went to the Village Vanguard. So I think I must have done it okay. But the new story Bluebird is coming out in October, and I'm very excited about it. It is about a German immigrant coming to America in just after the end of the war, so post-war, very beginning of the Cold War, and she is coming with a secret that she should not have, and she is coming not to really seek a new life. She is coming to seek justice, because she is coming to seek a Nazi who has slipped the net. And what she encounters when she arrives is not at all, I think, what anyone would have expected. So I'm very excited about it. It's a very Sharon book in a lot of ways, but I think it's a good follow-up to the Light and Hidden Places. It sort of looks at some things from the other side of the coin of the war, and other kinds of victims of war. I think that's one of the things I learned going to Poland and doing 3 years of intensive research on World War II, is the victims are widespread across the world and through time. The victims are still now. The ripples of that still affect.
And on all sides. That's the other thing that I've learned too, is that they're everywhere. They're not just on your camp or my camp or a winner's camp or a loser's camp. They're everywhere. Yes. Everyone loses in war in some way.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think it's the balance of a lot of dark and a lot of light that I really enjoyed exploring in writing this book.
Well, that brings me to your author's note. That actually it wasn't an author's note. It was a dear reader note in the front of the
galley of the art. Yeah,
I'm so taken by it, because you talk about how you came to know Stefania's story. But I wanted to read just this little bit that you say. Politics and culture might have changed since the 1940s, but the fundamentals have not. Love breeds love, and hate breeds hate. And that's why the story of the Podgâorska sisters is a story for now, just as much as then. We need heroes. We need people of courage to stand up and say no in the face of hate. This is exactly what we're living through today, right now, as well. I mean, the past is current. The past has not passed, as Faulkner says. It's not dead. It's not even past, Can you speak a little bit to that, or do you want to at all?
No, I do, because that is a subject so near and dear to my heart, as I'm sure you know. And I think you will agree with me. Writing books like Kent State and the others that you have written, these kinds of historical fiction books are not about the past. And I think that is what I pull from them. They are books of now. You know, in the case of The Light in Hidden Places, you know, the hate that created the Holocaust did not die the day Hitler died. It is alive and well. And I think this past year in our country has shown us that it is alive and well in all sorts of different forms. And it is something, it is a fight that is now. And I think that we can pull so much from looking to what others have done in the past when they are faced with these situations, because we all have to make this decision, right? We all have to decide, what am I going to do when I am standing in the face of hate? What am I going to do about it? And, you know, I think Stefania Podgâorska was the most ordinary teenage girl you can imagine. She lived in a backwater city of Poland. She was not a person that anyone would have considered to be important.
Right.
She was not important, but she made a choice. And it started with a small choice.
Right.
It started with a small choice that I show in the book, where she looks at her skin and she makes a decision in her own mind that her Catholic skin is no different than Jewish skin.
Right.
And that was a small decision that set the stage for the bigger decision of, yes, I will hide you, Max, and yes, I will hide the 13 of you, and no, I will not leave, even though the Nazis are coming in.
Right.
And those decisions that she made as just as an ordinary girl, they changed the world. She changed the world. She changed the lives of those 13 people, and not just them, but their children and their grandchildren, and now the people that read her story. That decision that started with that small decision about her skin and her head changed the world. And so don't our decisions, just as ordinary people living our ordinary lives, don't our decisions have that same potential? I think they do.
Absolutely. And she changed your life. You sat there and turned the channel and sat on the couch, and it changed your life. And that gestation took some years. Here it is. And then it's offered up. That's what I think we do when we write historical fiction. I think we offer up to whoever needs that, and we never will know who it is.
That's right.
We do it by faith, and we offer it up to the person who might need that book, or pass it on, pass that story on, and find that strength within themselves. And so I know our hour is up, but I want to lift the book up a little bit here, because it's The Light in Hidden Places. Oh, my son is coming in. My Sharon Cameron.
One too. Yeah. Here,
actually, there we go. It's a Reese Witherspoon book club pick this month in December, actually. Is it December? I can't remember. Anyway, it's a Reese book, and you can find it for a long time. You can buy it at Parnassus. It'll be signed. It'll be there for you, my friend. It has been such a wonderful thing to spend time with you face to face. I can't wait till we're in person, face to face, which we will do.
I think we will. Let's get on another train.
Okay. Let's keep writing, and let's send some love out to Pam.
Yes, absolutely, Pam. We miss you.
Our other sister, we miss you too, Pam. And everyone, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.